Watch more programs like this on cable and stream with PCN Select. Subscribe at pcntv.com.
Hi, I'm Rich Phifer, and I work for East Bradford Township as the Director of Property and Recreation. We're a township of 10,000 residents in Chester County. We are here today at Harmony Hill Nature Area. It's East Bradford Township's largest park and preserve at 240 acres. We're going to go check out some of the history of the property here today. It has a very interesting past, and it involves part of the early Quaker era of this area outside of Philadelphia, as well as some of the trolley line history associated with West Chester, which is the largest municipality in Chester County and located just outside of East Bradford Township. Okay, I mentioned that East Bradford Township was inhabited in the 1700s primarily by Quakers. And they were individuals who basically developed this area as an agrarian economy, very economical. What we see in front of us is a spring house that we believe likely dates to that Quaker era of inhabitation of the township, so circa 1750. And the spring houses, of course, were vital aspects to any functioning farmstead and homestead, in that they provided fresh water protected from the elements, but also featured as kind of early refrigeration systems, as the inhabitants would have potted foodstuffs and fruits that they grew on the property and put the lidded pots in the water that was relatively cold, and it helped preserve them. This particular ruin, the spring house in front of us, we don't know too much exact information on it. We don't have a date of its construction. We don't know who constructed it. And there's an associated Quaker era house across the little valley in front of us that is also in ruin. So it's likely that this functioned as a Quaker era homestead on what was most likely a farm that encompassed some amount of acreage that today is Harmony Hill Nature Area. Today, the nature area is 240 acres, and we know that typically Quaker farmsteads ranged on average from 100 to 200 acres, but portions of the park could have been larger or smaller at any given time in history, as we know they were, because individuals would buy tracts and add to them or sell off certain tracts. All right, we're here at what we suspect was a Quaker era home site. It's near to a spring house, but the construction of that era was very modest and very economical. They had to think of concerns such as heating aspects during the winters. And so what you see here is a two-bay stone structure, or the remnants thereof, of what we suspect was a Quaker era home. They would have used stone native of the site that they pulled from fields as they were cropping them and tilling them. And the stone of this site is known as phyllite rock, and that's what you see here composing the construction of the remnants of these walls. I'm standing on what most likely was about the threshold of the front door and the entrance into the house. The rear wall is behind me, so it was probably a two-bay structure where each kind of bay or room was roughly 15 by 15 approximately. The entrance would have been most likely on the downslope side of the hill, so that being the back wall, the side walls, and not much else is remaining to judge, how it would have looked like. We have no photos of what this structure looked like. We do have an approximate representation based on some other like construction in the township. We're standing here on what used to be the Westchester to Downingtown trolley line. And so behind me you can see the straight level bed of the trolley that they constructed in 1901. In the process of constructing the line, they had to build bridges over small creeks. Like you see in front of us are old stone abutments to what used to be a bridge that served the trolley line. They opened the trolley in 1902 and it survived until 1929. This section of rock is exposed like this because they had to do blasting when they constructed the trolley line to get a level surface for the trolley to be able to navigate the terrain. And so this is also a great representation behind and above me of the natural phyllite rock that is indicative of this local geography that is Harmony Hill and the Harmony Hill nature area owned by the township. The ruin behind me is what's sometimes referred to as the mansion house on the property. Although it was never, by today's standards, mansion-esque, it was constructed circa 1825 by Ziba Gray, who was born in 1801. The house behind me survived the trolley history and a succession of owners. Benjamin Lippincott bought the house in 1910, and he did extensive renovations to bring it up to the then, state of the art. And he operated the farmstead primarily as orchard lands. In its peak in the circa 1915, there were 17,000 orchard trees, peaches and apples on the property, some of the best in the area they were renowned for being. And Benjamin Lippincott eventually sold the farm to a man by the name of William Eads and his wife Persis. And Mr. Eads and his wife were the last owner-occupants to live on the farm. The house behind me is supposed to have burned down in the early 1970s under unknown circumstances. What you see behind me is the foundational ruins of the house. To my left, or your right, are two large sycamore trees that have withstood the test of time. And in some of the photos that we have of the house dating back to circa 1930s, you can see these two trees in much earlier form. And they are pretty nice specimen trees at this point, and indicative of kind of the past, homestead that used to be functioning here. The bridge I'm standing on crosses the Brandywine Creek's East Branch, and today serves as a pedestrian crossing between East and West Bradford Townships for what's known as the Brandywine Trail, the East Branch Brandywine Trail. However, the first bridge that was built in this location was built by Benjamin Lippincott in 1910 to gain access from the roads on the west side of the creek to his farmstead on the east side of the creek. The house which we've just seen and the barn ruins which we'll see as well. We have historic photos of this bridge that you can also see what it looked like in 1910 or thereabouts, which is the year it was constructed. I'm standing at the remnants of a bank barn that is associated with the mansion house we just viewed a little bit earlier, probably circa the same time period, 1825, constructed also with the local phyllite rock. We think that this bay here was the bay used for milking cows. As we know, there were cattle and cows kept on the property that grazed down in the floodplain areas of the creek. And so we think that's what this section of the barn was for. Coming around here, you see the remnants of a columnar kind of pier that would have supported a second story. That's what this is. And so the second story was of a frame construction where the frame pillars would have been embedded into the rear barnyard wall. And so you can see where they would have entered the wall here. We know that this barn burnt down at some point in either the early 1970s or late 1960s, so it was a casualty of fire, and what survived were the stone elements. All of the frame elements had burned. I'm standing now in what used to be the barnyard, and to my left you can see the remnants of the barnyard wall that formed around the barnyard, which would have contained livestock and animals and the such. Also to my left is another one of the many spring-fed creeks on the property that would have also served livestock and animals on the farmstead. We don't have any surviving photographs of what the barn, the bank barn ruin, looked like in its heyday, but we do know that it was a rather large barn structure composed of several bays. Over time, we suspect that there were additions put on to further serve the use of the farmstead and the property itself. East Bradford Township has spent the better part of 2 years now cleaning up the ruins to help preserve and maintain them, but we've also created a community gathering space. And so you see here we have some benches for the public that serve the site, and it's also become a nice little wayside attraction for the trails, which are all open to the public. Thank you for joining us for this tour of Harmony Hill Nature Area and the many interesting ruins and historical ruins on the property. I'd like to let you know that all of these trails are open to the public every day for free, and if you're interested, you can find out more at our website, which is East Bradford Township's website, www.eastbradford.org, and you can go to the Parks and Recreation page to get maps of the trails and information on all of our parks and properties. Thank you.